Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. NordVPN.com. That's NORDVPN.com. Not just a glove, it's a 44 Pro. Crafted with dedication, made for performance, and built to last. Get your custom glove today at 44pro.com and experience the 44 Pro difference. That's 44pro.com, 44 Pro.
Our patented handles were launched in 2018. We continue to push the boundaries of strength training. Join us in making your training more natural and effective. Visit Engels90.com to learn more and revolutionize your workout.
Looking for tickets to the hottest shows, games, and events? Ticket Liquidator is your one-stop shop for great prices, no hassles, and guaranteed tickets. Whether it's sports, theater, or concert, for the best seats at the biggest events, start with Ticket Liquidator today at ticketliquidator.com. Ticket Liquidator.
Introducing Bark in the Belly Premium Dog Food. 100% of profits go to help dogs in need.
Over 30% of adults struggle with chronic foot and joint pain, and many face mobility limitations as they age. But a revolutionary Comfort First slipper has taken the wellness world by storm. Try Cloud Slides and feel you are walking on the clouds. Cloud Slides.
The Wicked Boston Show on 365 Sports with your host Cam Stewart from Radio Row, Super Bowl 60. And my next guest needs no introduction because he's like the mayor around here. Howard Balzer of USA Today Sports. Howard, this is Super Bowl number
45.
45 for you, with one miss in between. Is that right?
The one miss was the pandemic.
That's fair. That's we'll let you miss that.
I was a little disappointed. Everyone says, well, that doesn't break the streak. But it was still unfortunate that whole season. But, hey, you go with what you have to do.
Yeah, and it's got to feel weird. Like,
exactly.
It's reasonable, but it's got to feel weird. And I got to ask you first, since we're talking about 45 Super Bowls now, or 45 Super Bowl weeks leading up to it, because we haven't got to the game yet. But here in Radio Row, we've been here a couple days now. It is an absolute madhouse. Just celebrities and the sponsorships and the studios. When did this start? Like, how do you see the evolution of this thing?
Well, the interesting thing first I'll mention, I don't know if you realize this, but the sign outside doesn't say Radio Row anymore. It says Media Row.
2026.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was not only was it called Radio Row, but it was a row. That's all it was. There was like maybe 5 or 6 stations that began it. I want to say in the early 80s, somewhere in there. My first Super Bowl was the 1980 season, and so I don't remember if there was a Radio Row then. I don't think there was. I believe that WFAN in New York was one of the first stations that thought of, hey, let's broadcast from the Super Bowl, and they couldn't get in anywhere to do anything. And as from what I've been told, they ended up doing it from a hotel restaurant. Or maybe a sports bar. I don't even know if they had sports bars back then.
That's a good point.
But point being is that's when it kind of started. That's when it started to grow and evolve. And then here we are now in these giant convention centers with rows upon rows of radio, podcasting, video, all the different things, that there are. I mean, you go back, I do a show. I'll be doing a show for Sirius XM NFL Radio after the Hall of Fame vote on Thursday evening. And, I mean, the Sirius setup, as some of them are, they're much bigger than a Radio Row was, back in the day. But, yeah, it's obviously grown tremendously and is a go-to place every year at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it is nuts. I mean, you hear about the magnitude. This is obviously my first time here. So seeing this is it's incredible. And what we get this week is there's always drama, Howard, right? There always seems to be, and I'm sure you can relate to this as someone who was, writing for years and years and years, right? Like, you're almost trying to plan it out, what angles am I going after, and then bang, something happens the week it pretty much takes over. And it usually happens when the Patriots are here. So we got a Boston show. We're talking Patriots. It's Patriots Seahawks last time had quite a bit with the Deflategate going on. So what is the craziest Patriot storyline that you recall being on Radio Row for a Super Bowl?
Wow, that's a good question. Now
There's a lot to pick from, aren't there?
Yeah, it really is. But sometimes it is like you said. It's the other stuff that was happening around them, and of course Bill Belichick was always the story. How's he going to be, during all the interviews, right? Because we know how he was. It's always on to Cincinnati or whatever it might be after games. And
the hood on.
Now he would approach it differently during the week because you never knew. But I believe, I'm trying to remember if that was the Super Bowl, the one where they played the Seahawks, when Marshawn Lynch was the big story of the week because he didn't want to talk to the media.
Yeah.
And they make it so that you have to show up for your media availabilities. Yep. And he did. He showed up, but then he wouldn't say anything.
I think it was, I'm just here so I won't get fined.
Exactly.
Wasn't that it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, but in terms of, there's always been that, talk around the Patriots. And, you mentioned Deflategate. There was the Spygate.
Yep.
There were all the things that always kind of dominated with the Patriots, which made it, I don't want to go too deep in all this, but which made it interesting, I thought, when the word got out that Belichick was not elected, which we believe that we'll know that officially tomorrow night at NFL Honors on Thursday. But the fact that it gets out early, and then all of a sudden there's all this talk about Spygate that might have influenced why some people didn't vote for him, and people said the voters are crazy. How could they do this? And yet for all those years after Spygate, most of the narrative, aside from Patriots fans, was the Patriots are cheaters.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick's a cheater. Now all of a sudden, Spygate shouldn't even matter. So there's like you said, there's always something around them. There's always kind of that aura, the Tom Brady and the crazy games that they'd have. So, but that's the memories there. But I'll tell you something, Cam. After a certain number of years, some of it starts running together, and you start thinking, okay, what was the controversy then? What went on then? Because there are, there, like you said, there's usually something. I think some weeks it's pretty quiet, pretty calm. Hey, just there for the game, but obviously there's always talking points.
Yeah, and I do want to go into the Hall of Fame thing, because obviously this is something you know pretty well. He's still a Hall of Fame voter.
Yes,
correct?
I'm a voter.
Yeah.
This is the 23rd class
Yeah.
that I've been involved in the election of.
And of course, what we will ask is for your entire ballot, and we'd like to put it up on the screen now. No, but I do want to get your take on just the swarm around this, right? We have the news about Belichick. This week we have the news about Robert Kraft. Is this the most, I guess, controversial Hall of Fame class that you've been a part of? And it hasn't even been announced yet.
Yes, no, exactly. No, I think it definitely is. And a lot of it is because it got controversial, because it got out in advance, which isn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
That's been a product over the last few years of the fact that, just for history's sake, we all used to vote on Saturday, the day before the game. We'd all get together in a ballroom of a hotel somewhere and vote, and then it would be announced sometime before NFL Honors. It would be announced just in a press conference afterward, right? Well, then they started NFL Honors, and we had to get our vote done in time so they could get the guys over to NFL Honors to be announced, right? Well, then they switched NFL Honors to Thursday several years ago. And when that happened, there was no way to do it in person, because those of us in the media that are working during the week don't have a whole day on a Thursday to devote to voting for the Hall of Fame. Saturday is kind of a dead day, right? So then the Hall of Fame had to come up with something else, and so but they still wanted to have what they used to have with David Baker, was the old knock on the door, right? Where they go, because all the finalists were in the city where the Super Bowl was, and they'd all be in their hotel room waiting to see if they got a phone call to say, sorry, not this year, or get a knock on the door, right? Well, now that you were doing it in person, you couldn't do the knock on the door, so they had to come up with something else. Well, they came up with flying to the city of the enshrinees and surprising them at their home or somewhere else. I remember, Peyton Manning, I think he was at the University of Tennessee in the stadium or whatever. They had to come. Well, so you had to vote well in advance. Yeah. So you vote. I mean, we voted, what is it now, 23 days ago on January 13th. And that gives the Hall of Fame time to contact people, right? Then plan for their trips all over to do that surprise and, surprise revelation, right? But the thing about it is, those who don't get in are called to tell them that they're not in. And so now you have all this time between, and the Hall of Fame always fears there's going to be leaks. And so this year was the biggest ever. And so no one knows how it got out. Did Bill Belichick reveal it? Did someone he told that he wasn't in reveal it? And then it got to ESPN so they could write that story. But this blew up into that because it was so far in advance. Now, every year after an election, there's people say, oh, boy, I'm surprised that this guy didn't get in or that guy didn't get in. Last year there was some surprise about Eli Manning who didn't get in. And so, and then there was a little bit of a leak last week about Manning not making it again. But there was hardly any talk about it, and there wasn't as much about Eli Manning. But this one, obviously, went viral. And I think a certain amount of it was because it was revealed in advance in a dead week between the conference championship game, obviously, and the Super Bowl. And so it's been a little quiet on that over the last week. But, we'll see what happens again when it becomes official after Thursday night.
Yeah, it could get a second wind. It could.
Exactly.
And we've kind of heard a lot about the process. You know, when the Belichick stuff came out, it was all about, it's because they hate the Patriots and Bill Polian. Obviously, the Bill Polian rumors come out, and that gives it a whole nother life. But we kind of have learned the process in the last week or so, and it's all these guys getting lumped together. Right. The Roger Craigs and the L.C. Greenwoods who didn't get in kind of the traditional way, and then you've got coach and owners all in that field. Is this the most pressure the Pro Football Hall of Fame has had to change that process?
Yes. And it changed last year, and the result was, and just to give those who don't know, I'll try to do it as succinct as possible. Please
dumb it down. Yes.
Prior to last year, and this was for whoever was up, and there's been different iterations of it, but contributors were separated from modern-day players in 2015. In 2021, coaches were separated from modern-day players. They were all considered together because it was very hard to get those guys in when they're competing against modern-day players for a spot. Then 3 years ago, they came up with 3 seniors finalists instead of what it had been 1 or 2 the previous 5 years. But the key to it, and that was because I always tell people, if you saw the list of nominees at the beginning of the seniors process, just any general NFL fan would look at that list and probably name 15 to 20 guys and say, oh, he's not in? Oh, he's not in? Oh, he's not in? That's why we call it the senior abyss. Some call it the black hole once you get in there, because it's very hard. So they made 3 finalists to try to get more of those guys in. Keep in mind that for those 5, it was still an individual vote. Each guy you'd discuss them, and then each selector would vote yes or no on each one, and they needed 80%. And most of the time, they got in. There had been instances where a senior guy didn't get in. There were instances where a coach or a contributor to get in doing it that way, but not a lot. The first 2 years of the increased seniors, 5 of the 6 seniors got in, right? Well, now we fast forward to last year when they changed it, and what we have to do is we have those 5 guys, and we're only allowed to vote for 3. And then they have to get 80% to get in. Well, just do the math.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Do the math. For obviously, and they made a minimum of 3 to get in, but all 5 could. Well, 5 can't.
Yeah, how are you going to get 80% for 5?
Because there's not 200 votes. There's only 150.
Yeah.
There's only 150. Oh, I'm sorry. It was a maximum of 3.
Yeah, okay.
Because we only voted for 3. It was a maximum of 3, but a minimum of 1. And that's what happened last year. Sterling Sharp got in from the whole group of 5 guys. 2 other seniors don't get in. Mike Holmgren, the coach finals, doesn't get in. Ralph Hay, a guy who was involved in the founding of the NFL back in 2020, doesn't get in. And so we're all looking. This is not working. This is not. And then for the modern day guys, instead of voting to 5 and then voting yes or no on all 5, they've cut to 7, and we could only vote for 5. And so instead of 5 guys getting in, which had happened for 2 decades, only 3 got in. So that's where we stood for this year. And then it gets complicated by Bill Belichick being in the ballot on his first time eligible, when, let's remember, it used to be you had to wait 5 years.
Right.
Well, they changed that.
Right.
And now you have Robert Kraft, who's been eligible to be elected for several years and was never the finalist before. Then this year, all of a sudden, the subcommittees make them both a finalist, and now they're competing against each other, much less competing against the players. And so that created, I believe, obviously created what happened. We know now, or we believe, it'll be official tomorrow night, that Kraft and Belichick didn't get in. So there will at least be 1 tomorrow. I wouldn't be surprised if it's only 1, which would mean that after having 5 of 6 seniors for 2 years, they'll have 2 of 6 in the next 2 years. And here's the thing, Cam. There have been some who said, well, and there's been some voters who have come out and said they prioritize players over the other guys. So they say, well, you shouldn't. You should just pick the most deserving guys. Well, my answer is the Hall of Fame prioritized seniors by going to 3 finalists, by combining the coach and contributor committee into 1 a few years ago when we elected a lot of contributors and they didn't feel there was that many great candidates waiting. So they devalued, in a sense, coaches and contributors and put more value on seniors, and then reverse course for, starting with last year. So we're all wondering what's going to happen next. They never could have anticipated that it would be like this. But you're right. And I think going into this year, a lot of people didn't even realize what the process was.
Yes, yeah, this has been a huge refresher.
No one even realized. The Hall of Fame announced it, but I think a lot of people didn't know it. And so when they saw only 4 people come on stage last year, there were a lot of people who were saying, wow, why was there only 4 this year? Why was there only 1 senior? But I don't know that anybody really knew. And I like to explain it all the time because it educates people, and they say, oh, that's how they do it? Yeah, that's how they do it. And like I said, that's created this. Now, I don't know that they ever expected the Belichick pushback to be as loud and crazy as it was. Would it have been the same if the leak never came out and then he's not walking on stage tomorrow? Yeah, there'd be people saying, wow, Belichick didn't get in. I don't know that the reaction would have been that huge. I don't know. We'll never know. But more of the focus would be on the guys that did get in. Yeah. And so, but that's where we are. And like I said, we're all very curious about what the Hall of Fame will do next, because it's hard to believe that this process as it is will continue.
I mean, I love that. It's the best Hall of Fame breakdown I think we've ever gotten, anyone's ever gotten. And I'll tell you who's really loving this week, unfortunately, is the Baseball Hall of Fame people. I think they're really loving all the controversy surrounding this. They're probably like, yes, they're not thinking about us and keeping all those guys out.
And one of the strange things is many believe that the change that the Hall of Fame made was an answer to the Deion Sanders camp that was talking about, well, some guys are getting in that maybe shouldn't, and there should be an elite place for all the busts and all that. Well, the one thing we have to remember, and you mentioned the Baseball Hall of Fame. The Baseball Hall of Fame doesn't have a minimum of guys that have to go in every year.
Right.
I mean, they send out a ballot, and there's close to 400 people vote, and they list 10 guys. Oh, they can list up to 10. They can also send in an empty ballot, and that counts as a ballot, even if there's no one on it. And then you have to get 75%. And if no one, I think there was several years ago, there was no one got in from the modern day group, and they're fine with that. The Hall of Fame forever basically has had minimums. Yeah. And so what the minimums do, so if someone wants to say, well, someone should be a Jerry Rice or to be able to get in, well, when there's a minimum of 4 guys, which it was for a long time, to get in from the modern day guys, well, then some of the other guys have to get in.
Right.
When there's not a quote elite.
We don't have that standard, basically.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And so because they want to celebrate, they need a celebration.
Yep.
They want people coming to Canton for the weekend.
They need to know how long the broadcast is going to be.
Well, and for a long time there wasn't a broadcast.
Yeah,
but in fact, they still did it that way. And so that has created that, quote, next level down. And I still think they're great players. I still believe you can be a Hall of Famer and not be the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
But there's some people who push back against that. But the key is there's been a minimum.
Yeah.
There's always been this minimum, which, by the way, is counter to the whole notion that you have to get 80%. Right? Because if that one guy from the group of 5, if nobody gets 80%, they're putting one guy in who had less than 40 votes.
Yeah.
If there's not 3 guys that get 40 votes in the modern day guys, let's say 2 do, but the third guy's going in. Well, think about that for a second. Let's just say one year somebody gets in with 38 votes. Right? And he's in because they had to have their minimum. Then let's say the next year someone has 38 or 39, but they had their quota, and so they're not going to get in even though they had just as many or more votes than someone who went in a previous year.
Gosh, what a mess.
How does that make logical sense?
That's a mess.
But that's what happens when you have minimums.
Right. And I think that's what it comes down to.
And so I don't know what the change is going to be. Maybe they'll still say, we'll vote for a certain number of guys, and they'll just say the 80% will go, or maybe there's been suggestions to lower it to 75%, but who knows how the votes will go. But there's no doubt in my mind that there was vote splitting with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, because they're both deserving. I would argue Kraft is as deserving as Bill Belichick.
Yep.
And so if anyone voted for both of them, and we don't know, if anyone voted for both of them, you'd only have 1 vote left for a seniors player. Mm-hmm. So I would believe that there were people who said, I'm going to pick one of those guys and then be able to vote for 2 of the seniors, because that'll give them more of a chance to get in.
Yeah.
And that's a product of the process that put us in a very, very difficult position.
Yeah, and you've had to kind of defend it a couple of weeks, defending kind of the whole process of this thing, or at least explaining it. And now we get to the Super Bowl, and it's supposed to be all about the game, and this is the thing that comes up. But I'm intrigued by this Patriots team being in the Super Bowl. We mentioned it a little while ago. You've been to 45, a lot of Patriots the last 25 years, right? And usually it was the same thing, right? There was a controversy, and even if there wasn't, there was hatred, there was spite towards them, and they were usually the favorite.
Yes.
We don't really have that right now. Outside of the Belichick-Kraft controversy, this team doesn't have it. They're not very hateable, and they're the underdogs.
Right.
So how different does this feel being at a Super Bowl where pretty much nobody here is thinking the Patriots are going to win?
It's a great question, and I think it really does give it a good feel. I think it also amplifies Robert Kraft's case to be in the Hall of Fame. And I wonder, Cam, if let's say the vote, when we voted, we knew they were in the playoffs and had won a game, but we certainly didn't know they were going to the Super Bowl. Yep. Suppose we were voting on Saturday, like it had been for a long time, and they are in the Super Bowl. Does that then even give more strength to the Robert Kraft
you're
argument?
Talking about an owner who's gone to a Super Bowl with 3 different head coach quarterback combos. That's a change.
Yeah, no
isn't it?
question. So it does change the vibe of this game, and of course it is a former Patriot who's the coach.
Yep.
Certainly.
Yep.
But you give him a lot of credit. He never should have been fired by the Tennessee Titans. That's another topic altogether. But it's a team that certainly no one. Everyone says the Seahawks are a big surprise too. Well, everyone forgets they tied for the division lead last year with the Rams. They were 10-7 with Mike McDonald in his first year as head coach, and he took over a team that I believe I forget if they were either 8-9 or 9-8 the year before. It wasn't like he was taking over a 4-win team, right? And so they were pretty good last year. They didn't get in the playoffs because they lost the tiebreaker in the division to the Rams. So now you have this Patriots team coming from nowhere, right? And yes, I think a certain amount of the narrative during the season was about not a real tough schedule, and that's a fact. They play. When you add up the records of all the teams they played, it's the worst in the NFL. But now that they've won to get here, that changes the narrative. And say, well, this is a worthy team. This is a worthy team. So I think it's going to should make for a very interesting game on Sunday.
Howard, you've been so generous with your time. I'm going to wrap it up here because I know you got other responsibilities today. But I'm thinking about the upsets that the Patriots have been a part of in these Super Bowls. You're on number 45 this Sunday, and I know you're going to hate this question because you've been to so many of these. What is the biggest shock that you've seen in the Super Bowl?
Wow. I would still have the biggest shock was how they came from behind. And I know this doesn't have to be a Patriots shock.
Yeah, go ahead.
It doesn't have to be.
Open it up.
But when you're behind 28-3 in the third quarter, and the game, for all intents and purposes, should be over, and they come back from that to win the game in overtime, that's right up there with the biggest shocks. I don't think there's any doubt about it. As I on the flip side, you could probably say that one of the bigger shocks was the Giants beating the Patriots.
I was hoping he wouldn't.
In the Super Bowl in the undefeated season, but I think you'll appreciate this a little bit because I think generally one of the cliches in football that I hate the most is, quarterbacks get too much of the credit and too much of the blame when something happens to a team. That's just the way it is. And I always say, well, why is it that way? Can't anybody look at a team and see that, the quarterback's important, but right? And heck, in some of the Super Bowls that the Patriots won, Tom Brady wasn't great. He wasn't a Hall of Fame quarterback in some of those games. And in that Giants win, here's the discussion about Eli Manning. Well, he won 2 Super Bowls. No, he didn't. I hate that more than anything. When you say about a quarterback,
those teams in
he
particular.
won or he lost.
Yeah.
Teams win or loss, especially in the ultimate team game that has 11 guys on the field at one time. And my point on those Giants teams, that's why it was kind of such a shock, is as good as the Giants were on defense, Eli Manning in that offense wouldn't have even been in the position to have a game-winning drive if the defense hadn't shut down that Patriots offense.
And we're talking 10-7 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
greatest offense ever at that point.
The Patriots scored 14 points
in
that undefeated in the Super Bowl in that undefeated season. The defense shut them down. But Brady was the MVP, or Manning was the MVP. Yeah, because who on the defense, unless you have 6 sacks or 5 sacks or something,
right.
or the greatest example of all time, Larry Brown, when he had 2 interceptions,
picks,
and all of a sudden he's the MVP, and he was playing zone defense.
And he got some good money off of that.
And free agency, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing with it. It's hard enough for a defensive guy to win, but it's almost impossible unless they just have totally off-the-chart numbers. So that's why Eli Manning was the MVP, and was helped by kind of one of the most crazy catches in football history with David Tyree.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are 2 that come to mind in terms of the most. You use the word surprising? Biggest shock. Yeah. So those are the 2. Some others don't. Maybe the way as I'm thinking about this, the way Washington came from behind to, not that they beat it 10-0, then they scored 31 answered points to be leading at halftime, and just put a number on the Broncos in that game with Doug Williams at quarterback. That was shocking because you saw the way the game started and then what happened afterward. So those are a few that come to mind. I'm sure if I thought about it longer, I'd come up maybe with a few more.
We'll rank it 1 through 45.
Oh.
We'll get to you at the end of the week, and we'll have that list for you. Howard Balzer, USA Today Sports, Pro Football Hall of Fame voter as well. Howard, really appreciate your time. You're so generous with us today.
My pleasure, Cam. Take care.
It's the Wicked Boston Show on 365 Sports. We'll be right back after.
Relax with Hemp Delicious. Organically grown hemp, massively blended with delicious organic herbs, responsibly sourced for their holistic benefits. Each sip offers calming, antioxidant-rich wellness. Brewed just for you. Sip the calm with Hemp Delicious.
At Open Goal USA, we're revolutionizing training for both soccer and lacrosse with our innovative portable rebounders. Perfect for players of all ages and skill levels. Visit OpenGOAAALUSA.com and elevate your training today.
Farmhounds offers natural treats and chews made with quality products that support family farm, regenerative agriculture, and humane farming practices. Give your dog the best with wholesome, organic ingredients that promote health and happiness. Shop now at farmhounds.com.
Get paid faster with Bill, the easiest way to send, receive, and manage your payments. No more delays, no more hassle. Whether you're a freelancer or a business, Bill makes payments seamless and secure, simple, fast, and reliable. Sign up today at Bill.com. We are Rogue Media Sports.